Um, cool. Yeah. So, welcome to the DZPD weekly. I don't know. We're not really a build stream at the moment. I think we'll call it the weekly trying to digest TU6 stream. Um,
Yep.
this is
With
my
builds coming up soon.
co-host. Yeah, builds coming up soon. We're making adjustments. We'll show some stuff off tonight, but full new builds. I don't. We're still trying to fix the ones we had. Um, so this is my co-host, the very dapper looking
That's
golden
right.
voice of gaming, Negan
Decided to
Killjoy.
dress up tonight. Not as
Yeah,
dapper as you with the tie and stuff going on, but I'm close. I'm close. Trying to pull it off.
I like the fedora.
I figured you would.
Yeah. So we actually got a request for our show tonight. To
We're gonna
go
do
take
that,
a look
huh?
at the new shooting range. I haven't really spent any time in there actually until last night, and so I mean it'll kind of be an exploring the shooting range, I guess, kind of show.
Hmm.
But I think we can go down there and look around for a minute, and we're going to talk about a couple other things first. Just wanted to talk for a minute about exclusive gear. Um, so all the name stuff. A week ago we didn't really have a full grasp on what that looked like in terms of the name stuff, and so I was going to bring up a couple things because the build I'm wearing right now has any of it in it. I don't think it does. I know it doesn't. But we were collecting some of that stuff, and we went into the dark zone last night, which
Yeah, we
of
did.
course for us is pretty weird. We went in there though because they've locked like the best named gear behind the dark zone, which is shocking because I mean, it's going to force people in there.
Right. Right.
Which
Which
I know
which
the
is something
community
mess.
the
Yeah,
community hates, right? Like the community
they
hates when
do.
you lock stuff in there
Yeah, and
because the dark zone is a very polarizing place. Yeah.
yep. And it's not surprising. Massive has always talked about wanting to increase or improve the PvP experience and try to get people to play it and get some feedback and stuff like that. So it's really only partially surprising they're putting stuff like that. But yeah, the community gets a little annoyed with it.
Yeah, that I was just I think a little shocked by it because you and I are I think both more division Reddit guys, and I hadn't noticed a ton of salt on Reddit over it. So I guess I didn't,
Mm-mm.
it didn't really show up on my radar um, until 2 days ago when I realized I was looking. You had asked me, was there an LMG with Perfect Unhinged? And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. But there is. It's called Black Friday. It's a Mark 249B. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, huh. And then I looked at the source and it said DZ only, and I realized there's like all the best stuff, actually. The perfect Berserk chest piece, the perfect on the ropes backpack, whole bunch of stuff is only in the Dark Zone. And I'm like, that kind of sucks. I was like, man,
That
the
it.
community doesn't seem outraged about it, right? So they aren't on Reddit, but I think it's just that there are not a lot of people on Reddit anymore for the division. So I went on the official forums, and yeah, there's a lot of salt posts on there about it. So community is salty about it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what communities do these days. I think there's a an outrage button that somebody hits and somebody gets on top of it, and then they pile on that point. But I can understand. I mean, like you said, we don't go to the DZ that much. So if there's perfectly rolled items or named items, and that's the only place you can get them, that can be, especially for the people who are putting like an LMG, like you just talked about. That's a little frustrating.
yeah,
But
yeah. It is.
but
I
having
think it's
said
a little
that,
frustrating.
last night DZ wasn't too bad.
I was gonna say then that was gonna be my next point. I was gonna ask you what you thought last night because Negan knows this, and I go in there a little bit more than these guys. Negan and Horchata. Horchata is usually DZ adverse. We don't usually go in
Mm-hmm.
there at night. I usually just go dip in there, like, throughout different times. during the day. If I get a minute, like lunch, I'll dip in. So I was interested to see what you thought because it didn't. I was actually anticipating that it being evening, it was going to suck. Usually when I go in like on a lunch break, no one's in there. It's, you know, pretty quiet, but I was anticipating busy. There were other people, but we didn't fire a single shot at anyone else, and nobody fired a single shot at us. There were rogues, but they seemed to be occupying each other. It seemed to be more of like a Fight Club thing, and
Yeah, it was
I don't
definitely
know.
Fight Club
What was your
over by
thought?
one of the
I
extracts.
did. Yeah.
Same feeling. I was expecting some sort of action and not having a PvP build. Just I go into the DZ knowing, and I think everybody should go into the DZ, whether or not you, if you have stuff in your pack, it's really not yours to extract it. So don't get all sensitive about what you have. That if it's a perfect piece, and get a little sensitive, but don't lose sleep over it until you get it extracted. And I figured we'd get jumped a couple times as well, just because I've been reading that the DZ has been more full. Is that the phrase? Fullest lately? I don't know.
Fuller.
Let's go with the right word. Fuller. Words are hard.
Fuller.
So that's what people have been talking about. So I was concerned about that again because I don't have a PvP build. Ironically, for you to say you don't go in there much these days, you do have a PvP build, and you've talked about one before. I think you said you threw one on last night as well.
I did, yeah, and it's an
So
older one. It's an older PvP build. Um, because I had a really good PvP build. I had the meta Bloodsucker 3-11-7 with Spotter on the ropes that they nerfed the heck out of. I had that build, and I had one really well optimized, I might add, that could pretty much face tank anybody in the Dark Zone for long periods of time. The only other thing I ever had to worry about was somebody else with the exact same build that had theirs as well optimized as mine. But yeah, that build's not viable anymore. So I threw on a Berserk build last night with like 380k health and no clutch. I didn't put on. I have a clutch version of that. I didn't put the clutch version on. I just went for the high health because I knew we were going to be farming, and I wasn't going there specifically to PvP, but it would definitely hold its own PvP fight.
So talk about
But
that
I
for a
did.
sec, because you said you go in there with a high health, but there were a couple times last night that your comments were your health didn't seem to stand up for very long.
So in the PvE setting, no, not anymore.
He
Again,
says
because
he says with a sad face.
well, I think there's been some changes, and you probably understand more of it than I do because I know I read it, but I think you read it in more detail. But they tuned up the explosion damage
Yes.
to try and equal it out because it's supposed to be as effective as um, the gun damage, and it wasn't at level
Yeah.
30 or something along those lines. I mean, again, you, I think, read it. You were kind of telling me about it. I know I read it in the notes, but it was like, I didn't pay much attention.
Yeah. It actually, they talked about it specifically on State of the Game, where I forget, it's like one of the directors of AI or something like that. And what he said is that it wasn't nearly as effective. Once you hit 30, the explosives weren't doing what they wanted them to do. And that was to force tactics around, if you're going to get bombed with an explosive, you have to move. You just can't sit there and we've noticed this, and we talked about this a couple times with hazard protection pre TU6, that you could sit there and you could just tank the grenades. They would just land on you. You could just tank them and they wouldn't affect you. So they did bring that up post 30, and the way he described it was he brought it up to match gun damage, and then they kind of dialed them both back a little bit. So they do more damage. They make the tactics that they want you to run because they wanted, the idea behind them, as he said, was the grenades bounce you out of cover, and then the snipers, NPC snipers, are supposed to punish you for it. And that's what they wanted. That's the synergy they wanted. So, and that's what they did, as we noticed with the explosions. And we did notice it a couple nights ago as well, running some heroic content. It seemed we were. I think a couple times it was like 1.5 shots with an explosive. It was like bam, and then bam, armor and health were gone, and we were down. So they did change that, and the explanation why makes more sense. It really does.
It
Doesn't make
does.
people
I still
happy.
think it's. I was gonna say. I think it sucks. because the amount of times I get insta-down now for no apparent reason. Um, I think they could pull. Here's what I think. If they, and I'm just gonna say it because I'm in a salty mood tonight. If they built an actual quality, stable game that didn't suffer from so many different aspects of lag and visual disturbances and different things like that, I think it would be okay. The problem is that, you know, this game is not amazingly stable, and so you don't even always see where you're taking damage from. And I know you've experienced that too, right? Like if 3 grenades come your direction, you might only see one of them. And when I say see, I don't mean like you missed it. Like only one of the 3 shows up the whole way in the arc. You know what I mean? Or lands or whatever. Um, that creates a pretty crappy experience when you can't tell where it came from. Maybe it wasn't even there on your screen, but all of a sudden it's next to you on the ground and blows up. And you're like, so I don't know. I'm not happy about it, but that's what I meant from last night too. Is like I was taken. You know, if anything was on fire, fire's gotten a lot stronger. All the AOE effects got stronger. If I was getting hit by fire, man, my health, 370k health wasn't going far. You know,
Right.
against stuff like fire. Which 370k health's not nothing. Just saying, it's not nothing. 180,000 armor and 370k health is not nothing. So there's that. But at this. So out of the Dark Zone last night, you know, again, I think what you were saying earlier, like if you get really good gear, you shouldn't count it as yours till you've extracted it, right? That was good advice. Um, we'll say the one nice thing, because the fact that they lock that stuff in there is going to create that scenario where you're going to be pretty butthurt if it gets ripped off, right? Like if you farmed in there for hours to find the Black Friday and you get it, and then it gets ripped off, you're going to be pretty mad. I did get one named piece in there last night, the Hollow Man, which is this bad boy's got 70% hazard protection on it as it sits right now.
Dang.
Perfectly insulated on it. But that was a drop. It wasn't contaminated. And
That's kind of nice.
on Reddit, I think it was on Reddit when people were talking about the unique DZ drops. Most people have been getting their stuff and not having it be contaminated. So maybe they tuned it that way a little bit. Which would be
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That would make it less. I mean, you're gonna get, like we talked about, you're gonna get ganked, or you're gonna get 4 man on 2 or whatever like that if you don't have PvP build. And you had mentioned it that the teams that are most of the ones that are running in there running manhunts, and this has always been the case, even going back to Div 1. This has always been the case regarding people who are in there and people who are running gangs are usually have an optimized PvP build. So unless you have one, you're going to suffer the consequences. So, and that's where some of the salt comes from, and that's what they try to do with normalize and stuff like that. So, and just because I haven't built PvP builds, that's why I don't go in there that much. But I'm now looking at them as an option because it was fun. I enjoyed it last night. It was a good time, and it
I had
challenges
fun too.
and the fact that the landmarks aren't just all reds. I mean, it's challenging content in general, so you can go in there with a build and check out whether your build works or not in general. So that's kind of nice too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
There is that.
Good. I liked it.
Yeah, it was a good time. All right, so shall we talk about what we came down here to talk about since we're sitting in the firing range?
We are. Yeah, so they made some changes. I had to go look them up because reasons. Anyway, so
Well,
I'm
because
going to
we
use
usually,
this range
I mean,
here, but yeah, we
usually
come
sit
down
in the
here to
DPS
goof off.
range.
So in the DPS range, they added these range markers. You shoot them, you change how far, auto set it, right? Otherwise, it's going to cycle like it used to. I'm going to set it to 5 because close. They added some additional difficulties. So we have veteran, we have elite, we have named elite, and then we're gonna have invulnerable, and then invulnerable elite. And those invulnerables are actually to test your sustain damage. So how much sustain damage you have. Ones are to test your burst like they were before. Show you that. Just so you know, the build I'm running a an LMG and assault rifle build with filler up on it, and yeah, I mean it's a pretty standard, close to the old build. The only new talent I'm using in this one that's in here is I do have a Petrov mask, which of course didn't exist till TU6. And it has concussion, which of course also did not exist till TU6. So yeah, a couple new pieces on this build. It's very similar to the one I had before. And so if I ripping this off, yeah, bursting down, sustain up a nice 1.5 million here.
Dropping shots for 90,000, 100,000 shots. That's not bad. Nothing to walk away from.
No, not bad, right? So anyway, that's this a decently optimized build. Now I will show you the invulnerable. That's kind of fun. With invulnerable elite, especially with the filler up build. So I'm actually gonna start with my LMG. You can see the health bar just keeps coming back, right? And it's literally.
Oh, he's showing off filler up. I like it. Nice. Leave it up. That poor target. Never stood a chance against you.
No, it did not.
It's kind of like you're playing one of those carnival games where you're trying to clear out the whole spot around the star.
Well, my fill up's not working real well in here for whatever reason. Anyway, yeah, so that's how that works. And again, that tests your sustain. I'll switch builds here. Throw on a Pokeball build or what? Item missing. An item being missing. Oh, never mind. I know why it's missing. Because I got a better one. That's why it's missing. Okay. So throw on a Pokeball build. This is just a standard compensated build. Let's see, did I make any changes here? Oh yeah. Handling the unique talent thing, right, is kind of tricky. So in this particular case, I put on a mask with empowered. And this is going to have on the ropes. So I'm not going to do invulnerable on this one. I'm just go back to elite. Let's look at the burst damage. So I can actually go over to the wall over here and reset my skill cooldowns. Skill cooldowns. I don't know why I'd want to reset my skill cooldowns, but and reset them. In fact, what I want is actually to use my skills so that they are on cooldown. And I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to pop those, blow them up, pop heals, and have on the ropes going. Yeah, there we go. Pop these down again, blow them up. You can see on the ropes is hitting pretty hard there.
Yeah, it is. Dang. Now, when you said that you don't know why you'd want to reset skill cooldowns, aren't there some? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I thought there were some talents that require your skills to be
off
Is it all of
cooldown?
them? I thought they were,
I
but
think they're all
probably.
on cooldown. I think they're all on cooldown.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the other button's the one I think people are probably going to use more.
Right, and I'll show that one off in a second.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
1.6, 1.8. Look at you.
it's pretty hard, and that's not even on the ropes. Isn't even up. That 1.8 was the only one I got off with on the ropes working. Because when you blow your Pokeballs up, they come back really quick.
Right.
So the build I was running last night in the Dark Zone looks something like this. Which again, if you look at it, I've got 100 or 370,000 health, 185,000 armor. So now this is Berserk, right? So I want all my armor gone. So now they have this cool damage self button. Check that out. I'm dying.
Oh no!
And it'll
not in
leave
the
it
fire
there.
range.
Unless I heal it, I'm gonna stay here. So it's not
I'll
gonna.
go see if I can find a medic. I'll be back in just a second. I'll find you a medic.
Yeah. Seem to need one.
They don't
You
seem
can
to
see with Berserk on again. Pretty decent numbers here from Berserk. And let's see here. So obviously also strained. Like a strained SMG is going to be pretty strong. Magazine in there.
So with TU6, have you noticed any difference with stuff like Berserk and Strained, or have you made any? Since we're probably talking about that more in a future episode, but have you noticed any big differences between those type of talents, or is it just the way they stack the talents now in general?
That one feels same as it always did. I haven't noticed anything. Like Berserk Strained feels basically the same as it always has. So against the enemies here, this is not going to be as strong as my assault rifle.
Right. They're about 700,000 less than you just were a second ago.
Yeah. Yep. I think. Let's see if I reset it where it comes in. Part of that is a lot harder to hit headshots, right? I mean, thing bounces around a ton more. My my FAMAS is a laser beam at this range.
Which is a gun that got a little bit of a boost for TU6. Again, speaking TU6 and stuff like that.
It got a significant buff, yeah. Like a lot. It went from
made it great again.
Like, I don't think any single gun got a bigger buff than that, right? I mean, it was garbage tier. And now it's top tier. Same with the Police M4, which used to be garbage tier and now is more or less top tier. So here again, we got, accuracy range here. You can set it. Pick your one. I suck at this, by the way. I'm bad at it. As you can see, I'm terrible. My PTK is awful.
Have they fixed this portion of the range? I can't recall, because this one it wasn't registering your shots before. So you'd be like, you nailed 20 times. It looks like it is now, I guess. We could, you know what, with your accuracy being a little off tonight, we'll blame that. The game's still broken. It's not your shooting.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's perfectly fine. It's not me.
That's right. It's not you, not at all.
Not at all, man. AOE down here, this is for testing things like those Pokeball builds. You can, use your skill builds down here, which yeah, there's a lot of build switching here. Uh, uh,
Oh no, I have to
so
get you another
this
medic.
is
Or are you still hurt?
this is hurt. I don't know. This is my old. I turned my old um 3.11.7 PvP build. I turned it into a PvE build because there's no point using it in PvP anymore. So I made a PvE build out of it. I'm hilarious. So I have a 3.11.7 unbreakable on the ropes compensated Pokeball build. Which is a lot of acronyms and things to say, right? But
There's a lot of things to balance with each other and figure out what the hell you're doing.
let's put it this way: very, very, very yeah, something going on. So you can see Pokeballs are man, they are still wicked, wicked strong. Um, like super broken strong. Don't know. We've
Which,
been
if you
still
listen to
using them.
some of the salts, as you were talking about earlier, some of the salt and Reddit and stuff like that, is people were a little annoyed that they did quote nerf them. But we've shown, and I think you and Horchata still have pretty good Pokeball builds that run into in content. They're still valuable. They're still viable, and they still
Yeah,
do a
I
lot of
mean,
work. And
I'm not even running BTSU gloves, right?
mm-hmm.
And these Pokeballs are hitting for 600,000, 700,000. Like when they don't crit, I'll wipe this whole group of dudes out in a split second here with this. Oh, what is that doing? Come on.
Blip.
Yeah. That's on very hard. So that's the hardest setting. Blows them all up with ease. I don't know, man. I think they're still pretty strong. I think I think they buffed them, but then I think explosive damage has gone up. And so I think out of all of it, net it might have actually been a gain. The other thing is, a lot of people came back and they were pretty upset because, right, you can't stack destructive, can't stack the DTE, but they buffed. Oh, and they took away the batteries being as strong, some of that other stuff. But if you're able to unlock the mods, I mean, they made the Pokeballs stronger and they made the multipliers bigger. So it's like I had to spec more into skill power than I originally had on this build, um, in order to unlock my mods. But when I did, the Pokeballs are actually stronger than they were before the update, if that makes sense. And my cooldown is the same. So net, I didn't lose anything. That makes sense.
But you had to do what makes sense is you had to go into skill power to use skills more efficiently, or to get more, or to get the same
Correct.
stuff. That makes sense, and that wasn't something like they just broke and said, well, you have to go into more reds to get more damage on a Pokeball. You have to go into more skill, and that's again, they're skills. That's what skill power's for. That's what it should. That's how it should happen. So
Yes. And what I ended up having to do, right, is this was my 311 or yeah, 311.7 Bloodsucker build, and I had to switch to this unbreakable chess piece with 820 skill power because I needed the additional skill power to unlock the mods again because the requirement for the mods went up. So suddenly I didn't have enough skill power to unlock my good mod when I relogged back in. So I had to make that adjustment. And then on my other Pokeball build, which is just a standard 377. I had to change that mask. I had to create that mask that I'm using there up at the top. Providence mask with skill power and empowered on it. I had to do that in order to make it work because I didn't have enough skill power to unlock the mods, so that's how I addressed it there. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have to make a few minor changes, but you net, I ended up with stronger Pokeballs on both builds than previously, and they seem to still do just as much work. They steal just as many as Negan's kills as they ever stole.
Yes, they do.
So,
yes. Negan just
there's
softens up the
that.
bad guys for all the Pokeballs. That's all that happens with Negan out there. It's like, hey, there's a couple.
That's
oh,
what he
they're
does.
gone. Hey, there's a crowd. Oh, okay, that crowd's gone. I hope to get a couple shots
Hey,
on
but
a boss here and there. Is what I'm looking for.
You know your role, right? I mean, it's all
I
good.
absolutely do.
You know.
The Pokeballs, you guys are doing anything, but I was rescuing a couple guys who were running some heroic content the other night, and it was picking up people. So that's my role. That's I'm cool with that.
You know what stinks is I can't test my grenade launcher in here on the AoE range, but I think that would be fun too. Can't do it, but
Yes, it's out of ammo when you come in here like this.
yeah, always out of ammo. And I'm yawning.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was what we wanted to feature for you tonight. Wanted to show you that. I will say, one other thing, like the on the gun front, like so many more guns are viable. So try different stuff out. Don't just stick with what you've done in the past, because a lot of other stuff is legitimately viable. Negan and I and Horchata have been playing with different guns all week. I really feel like they've closed that gap up. It used to be like there was so clearly a right choice, and anything else was just like blatantly a wrong choice. I don't know about you, but I feel like that's not so much true anymore.
Agreed. I mean, this week I've been playing primarily with a Pyromaniac I got just because it seems to do some work, and it's fun to because we were running ignited and the fire pokies and stuff like that, and people were catching on fire, which is kind of nice for me, and the fact I could then light people on fire and get more damage as well. So it's been a fun little gun. But you're right. I think finding other guns, looking around, see what you like. I'm in the process of putting together LMG build, which I haven't had before, just because I've heard that's doing some work. One of our guys we play with, Sagi, who was on last week, ran an LMG build last night, and that was doing out some damage as well, and that's good sustained damage. And you showed up a little bit earlier too, so yeah, there are definitely options, definitely more options out there.
There are a lot.
There's always going to be a meta. There'll probably some meta at some point will pop up, but even if you don't dig on the metas, there's a lot of options. Don't get stuck in the meta. Just move around, play around with stuff.
Don't get stuck in the meta. Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, this is that LMG build. Oh look, the magazine's wrong in it. That happens. Still that visual issue, huh? That's nice. Yeah, I mean.
You gotta end it on positive. You can't end it on salt. You gotta end it on a positive note, my friend.
My LMG puts up 3 or 1.3. Yeah.
There you go. And that's one of the things where if you went the invulnerable elites, that you'd see the sustained damage sits out there for quite a while. That's the advantage, and the reason you run LMG is obviously for the sustained damage and that stuff.
So, yeah, but that's pretty decent bursts. Even.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the good news. The ring is more fun. You can test more cool stuff. My LMG's hitting for 140,000 per round. Yeah, it's cool. So with that, I think we'll call it a night. Next week, maybe we'll have a build to show you. I did get one of those perfect vigilance chest pieces. I was thinking about building a build around it. Maybe show off my clutch build next week. So maybe we'll get something out, right? And
yeah, we will.
And take a look at it. But yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, and we'll see you next week. And with that, I will say, or Negan will say,
and see ya.